Okay. Yeah, so today, while cameras aren't going to be required today, they will be heavily suggested slash required for the next classes. If anyone wants to turn their camera on, I'd appreciate it. It sucks, for the lack of better words, teaching to just a bunch of blank screens. Um, yeah, so welcome to Psych 204. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? Joanne, okay, you can see it. Okay. Yeah, this is why we need screens. But anyways, so yeah, so welcome to Psych 204, the lab portion of the class. My name is Jeff. Class will go from 8:30 to 9:45. Though a lot of the days we won't push up, like I won't be teaching until 9:45, but we'll have a lot of work time, which we will hopefully today. Before we get started, if anyone took Psych 203 not at WVU. So if you took it somewhere else and got like the credit transferred over here, make sure you send an email to either myself or Dr. Tenenholtz, just so we can double check that the curriculum actually is that your 203 experience kind of matches ours. We already had a student who took Psych 203, I think at Potomac State at some other college, and she did not feel prepared at all for 204. So just please let us know through email if you have not taken 203 at WVU, just so we can double check. Yeah, so let's get into it. A little bit about me. So my name is Jeff. I'm a third year lifespan developmental grad student, PhD student. Though I've been in grad school now for this will be my fifth year because I got my master's before I came here. I got my undergrad and master's at Shippensburg University in Pennsylvania. Um, yeah, so I study the relationship between social media and well-being in adolescents and young adults. I'll try and scatter some of my research throughout the semester just to make things a little bit more interesting, because I think everyone kind of enjoys social media stuff. But yeah, so here's my contact information. I hold a lot of office hours. Um, Feel free to stop in at any time throughout these office hours, and I'll be on Zoom. You can find that Zoom link on eCampus as well as through an email that I'll send out every week, recapping what we talked about. Yeah, I'm also available almost any other time via appointment. Just let me know through email. Can't promise that I'll be able to meet just because I have other classes and stuff, but I'll try my best if you can't make any of these times. The undergrad TA for this class is Juliana. I believe she took this class last semester. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Dr. Toriano.
Sure. Perfect. So if anyone has any questions about the class or maybe how to study, you won't really have to study at all for the lab portion of the class, but I know there are tests in the lecture portion. So if you ever have any questions about like how to study or what information is important, she would probably be a really good resource to email. Yeah, so let's jump into today. We're going to talk about some just basic expectations and policies of the course. We're going to briefly touch on the research project, which is kind of the main goal or thing that we're going to be doing in the lab portion of the class, that and the paper regarding the research project. And then finally, we're going to finish it up with a little bit of a class activity with a refresher on how to write an APA style paper, where we're going to identify some problems with sentences. All right, so let's start off with just some basic expectations. This is pretty much boilerplate for every class, but got to go over it. So yes, I know what's in your syllabus, including the deadlines. I believe in the syllabus, all the assignments and when they're due are on the syllabus. Um, yeah, I believe there's a penalty for submitting it late, just like last semester in 203. Yeah, try to be engaged during class. I know it's 8:30 in the morning, and I'm not much of a morning person, but we got to do it. Contact me with any questions you have. I try my best to answer them in class, but it sometimes just because of like breakout rooms, there's just not enough time to answer all of your questions or answer a really big question in detail. So I may just try to answer to the best of my ability and then say like, hey, contact me after class and I'll be able to help more. If you have any questions about my feedback on assignments or how to do assignments, please let me know. What else? Yeah, complete assigned tasks to the best of your ability and follow the instructions. And that's just any class. But I'm going to emphasize following the instructions. I know some of Dr. Tenenholtz's assignments are kind of big, or they seem like there's a lot of pages, but she does a really good job at laying out the instructions, and the instructions are actually really important and they will help you get a good grade. So just make sure you're reading all the instructions before doing an assignment and make sure you follow them. What you should expect of me: fair and timely grading. I'll try to have assignments back by the next class. I typically get them out a couple days before. Sometimes it doesn't work out depending on the assignment. But yes, I'm going to try and get them back a couple days before, if not by the class period. Effective feedback. Yeah, so the way I do feedback is you're all going to be submitting assignments to eCampus in Word documents. I prefer Word documents because then I download them and through Word, make track changes and leave comments on your assignments, and then I'll upload them back up to eCampus. Spend a lot of time doing feedback, especially on your drafts. Typically, I spend like 2 or 3 days leaving edits on all the drafts for both of my sections. It's not a fun weekend, but kind of enjoy doing it. What else should you expect from me? Opportunities for help outside of class. I have a bunch of office hours. Feel free to stop in. I even have them on Saturday because I know some people aren't available throughout the week. So I do have office hours on the weekend. Sometimes that changes where I can't hold them. Like this weekend, we have our interview weekend, and I have to give, I think, 17 interviews on Saturday. So won't be able to have office hours this week, but on Saturday this week, but I don't think you'll need them. And an enjoyable learning environment. Like I said, 8:30 in the morning, Psych 204 lab, not exactly the most thrilling, exciting class, but we're going to try. Does anyone have any questions so far about expectations or office hours or anything like that? If you do, I should mention, if you do have a question, use the raise hand feature. Or if I ask if there's a question, you can just unmute yourself and turn your camera on and say something. But if you ever have any questions whenever I'm doing a lecture, use the raise hand feature. Typically, I'll see them. Sometimes I don't because I have multiple monitors and that pops up on my other monitor. If I don't get to it right away, Juliana will just interrupt me and say, hey, there's a question. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions, so let's move on. So of course, policies, once again, very basic stuff. Participation is required. It's a component of your grade. So please be engaged whenever during class discussions. Participate in your group. Like last semester in 203, I believe in the midterm and the final, there's 2 opportunities for you to give peer feedback on your group. So if you're not participating, you're going to get a worse grade. And meet with me outside of class. I believe built into the grade there is a spot for you have to come see me, just like you have to go see Dr. Tenenholtz. This will become really important whenever we start doing data management. So that way I can look at your data and be like, okay, yep, you cleaned everything perfect. You can start doing analyses now. If you don't come see me during that, there might be mistakes and it'll ruin the rest of your paper. So just please come see me whenever we start doing data. And we'll get more to that as the weeks go on. Let's see, contact me if you miss multiple lab sessions. Yeah, so while attendance, we will be taking attendance probably within the first 5 minutes of class and then also near the last 5 minutes of class. So please don't leave early unless I say so, because it will impact your grade. But if you have to miss multiple lab sessions due to an illness, please let me know. Email and eCampus. Yeah, I mean, everything will be posted on the eCampus that you need. I will send an email out after every class. It probably won't be immediately after the class. It'll probably be after my next section, which is at 2:30. So you'll definitely receive an email from me from 4 to 5 on Thursdays, where I basically just relist what we talked about in class, just give a really brief summary. And then if I have any other extra information about the assignment that either I thought I didn't explain well, or I just want to provide some more information, I'll put it in that email. Please read those emails uh, just because they'll have some good information about the assignment. And I'll also talk about my office hours if anything is changing. I never do posted announcements on eCampus. That's more of a Dr. Tenenholtz thing, but make sure you're reading hers. And then, of course, academic integrity applies to the course. Please don't plagiarize. Yeah, it's super easy for us to find out because there's literally a program that just tells us. So please don't do that. If you ever have any questions about how do I write this or how do I put this in my own words, I hold a lot of office hours. Please come. I'd much rather sit with you for an hour or two trying to write something if it takes that long than have to write someone up for plagiarism. Yeah, so lab requirements. So this is what makes up the course. We have several lab assignments. I believe there's 12 or 13. I'm not sure of the exact number. And many of them are drafts, so those are pretty important. We have the research paper, of course. You have the research presentation, lab participation thrown in there. So we're looking at a total of 400 points out of the 875 for the entire course. So the lab portion does take up a good chunk of your grade. So don't feel as though you can just slack off just because it's the lab portion. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I've gone over so far? Okay, gonna move on. Yeah, so let's briefly talk about the research project. I don't know if Dr. Tenenholtz talked much about this in her first class or this week, but we're just going to briefly touch on it and we'll get more into it as the weeks go on. So in a group, you're going to develop and implement and write up your own experiment. Can someone tell me what the difference is between last semester when you did a correlational project and this semester when you're going to be doing an experimental project? So can someone tell me what the difference is between a correlation and an experimental design? Just use the raise hand feature or just unmute yourself and you can say it if you know it. I should also mention that we are keeping track of participation in the class. Just putting that out there.
Last semester, I believe all we did was we did it was a correlational analysis instead of an experiment.
Good job. Can someone tell me what the difference is between the two?
I could say it if you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unless you wanted to. Okay. Correlational analysis looks at the relationship between two variables, whereas an experiment looks for a cause and effect pattern.
Perfect. Yeah, good job. So this is something that came up last semester where people would say, oh, my one variable affects the other or causes change in the other. And you just can't say that with a correlation. Correlation just simply looks at the relationship, while in experimental design, we're going to manipulate, we're going to change some aspect of the independent variable and see how that causes changes in the dependent variable. And I kind of want to show you why this nuanced difference is important. So this is a really fun website. Can everyone see this website that I have up? My Google, Julianne, just give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, perfect. So this one just looks at random correlations from any variable. Because remember last semester, you could take a correlation of any variable, any two variables, you can run a correlation. It doesn't matter what they are. And I'm going to show you why it's important to not make a cause and effect statement for correlations. So let's go to a fun one. All right, here's one. So we're looking at a correlation with the R value. So you remember whenever we ran it, or you did it by hand, but whenever you run it in SPSS, you get a p-value where it has to be less than 0.05 to be significant. But you also get an R value, the correlation value. So you can see an R value of 0.958, so 0.96. This is a really, really strong correlation. If you saw this in your actual research, you'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. So we're looking at the correlation between per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese and civil engineering doctorates awarded. So there's your two variables. And we can see there is almost a perfect correlation between these two variables. Now, you would never say the consumption of mozzarella cheese in the US predicts or affects how many civil engineering doctorates are awarded. You would never say that, right? Let's look at another one. I think there's one with Nicolas Cage. Right here. So the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool is correlated with how many films Nicolas Cage appeared in that year. Once again, you would never say, you know, Nicolas Cage causes drownings in a pool. You know, you just wouldn't say that. So it's really important that whenever we're talking about correlations like we did last semester, where we're just simply looking at the relationship between the two variables. And you can't have that cause and effect statement. However, whenever we run an experiment, we can say that cause and effect statement. So we'll get more into that as the semester goes on. But let's just briefly go over the research project. In a group, you're going to propose a research topic. You're going to read and find and read background research, develop and implement your own experimental design, collect the data, analyze the data, write it up, and then present it to the class. So that's what you're going to be doing as a group. Individually, you're going to be completing the homework assignments, unless stated that it's a group homework assignment like the first one is, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And then finally, your paper obviously is by yourself as well. I should mention, I'll mention it here. So last semester, we just randomly assigned you into groups for 203. This semester, we're going to allow you to choose your own groups if you want. So by next class period, can you please send me an email if there's someone in the class that you want to work with? I believe we're going to be doing groups of, I think 3 and 4. There may be a group of 4, but I think we're going to try to keep groups of 3. I'll have to figure it out. But if there's someone, you know, if there's 2 or 3 people that you want to work with, please send me an email with their names and then also like tag them in the email. Maybe you worked well with them last semester, or, you know, maybe they're just your friends, or maybe you just want to work with someone. Please let me know, and I will definitely be able to get you guys in a group together, or ladies in a group together. Are there any questions about the research project? I know we didn't really get too much into it, but this is just a really brief overview of what it is. Or any questions about the difference between a correlation and an experimental design? I haven't mentioned this, but all PowerPoints will be uploaded to eCampus. Actually, this one is now. Is that a question, Megan, or?
No, it's not.
Okay. All PowerPoints will be uploaded to eCampus. This one actually is now. Typically, I'll get it after the class, but sometimes I'll get it before. But definitely directly after the class, the PowerPoint will be up. And then most likely, probably from 4 to 5, probably closer to 5, depending on how YouTube does stuff, the video for this class will also be up. And I'll upload the YouTube link to eCampus. There'll be a separate folder within the lab portion of eCampus with PowerPoints and then also this video. Yeah, let's just briefly go over this and just some expectations. These are basically some do's and don'ts of doing the research project. Yeah, don't just develop a study idea just because it's easy. Do something you're actually interested in, because working an entire semester on a topic that your group isn't interested in is going to be really annoying. I've done it before. You know, it's not fun because you're gonna have to write a paper about this and you're gonna be reading research on it. Let's make it something you're actually interested in. That being said, you should use some background research to develop your idea. I remember last semester, at least in my 2 sections, 1 or 2 groups came up with an idea that was kind of hard to find research on because not really many other people have done it. So try and, if you have a good idea about what you want your experiment to be, make sure you kind of look at background research or some previous literature just to see if it's feasible. And I'll definitely help you guys coming up with ideas and working through it just to make sure that we can actually do them. And of course, just incorporate good research methodology, which you'll learn throughout the semester. Some expectations for project execution and participation. These are pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you're using good use of time. There is a component of your grade where you can rate, like I said before, you can rate group members in your group. So if someone's not pulling their weight, we'll know. Please let us know so that way their grade can show that. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, and we're going to do a little exercise where a sentence is going to pop up on the screen, and then I'm going to want someone to tell me what the problem is with that sentence. Some of them are going to be hard. We're going to be talking about APA writing, or just good scientific writing. If you remember last semester, we really focused on we focused on APA style. So, we really focused on citations, formatting issues, and what content goes in each section, what content goes in the intro, the methods, the results, the discussion. This semester, we're going to focus a little bit more on good scientific writing. Because scientific writing and creative writing are entirely different. And I think personally, that's why it appeals to me. I'm not much of a creative writer. I really like, set in stone, this is how you should say things. You right to the point, no flowery language. That's really scientific writing. So there is a difference between the two. But yeah, so let's jump into it. So I'm going to show a sentence. I'll read it out loud. I just need someone to, use the raise hand feature to tell me what they think the problem is. Don't worry if it's not right. Some of these I'm going to expect that some people aren't going to be able to get, or actually no one's going to be able to get. But yeah, so let's jump into it. So the first one, can someone tell me what the problem is with this sentence? The participant's average heart rate was 64. So just use the raise hand feature and see if you can tell me what the problem is with this sentence. Lauren, can you tell me?
There's no units after 64, so 64 could be anything really.
Perfect. Yep. Whenever you have, you should always include the unit of measurement. While we can probably guess that they meant beats per minute, we could be studying anything. I mean, the participant's average heart rate was 64 pumps. So if you're looking at, because the heart, pumps out blood, maybe we're looking at pumps, which would be different than beats per minute. Yeah, so always include the units of measurement whenever you're doing it, whenever you have one. We'll probably be doing units of measurement. You'll be doing units of measurement in your results section a lot, because we'll be talking about the age of our participants, or whatever you're actually measuring. You're all going to be measuring different things, so you always want to include those units. Good job. All right, next question. There's actually two problems with this one. Study results prove that chronic stress causes migraine headaches. Can someone tell me, so there's two problems. Can someone tell me at least one? If you know both of them, you can tell me, but at least one. Megan.
Yeah, no, I could be wrong, but in a hypothesis it doesn't prove anything, right? So the right word wouldn't be prove.
Good job. Perfect. Yeah, so that's the first problem. You should always avoid terms like cause and prove when you describe your study results or any study results, because you're right, one study doesn't prove anything. You can say suggests. So, if you're talking about prior research, you'll do this a lot in your introduction. You'll say, hey, this research suggests that X is related to Y. You never want to say proves that X is related to Y. So you always use words like suggests. Can someone tell me, does anyone have any idea what the other problem is with this question, with this sentence, excuse me? Lauren, yeah, do you know this one?
It doesn't say like whose study, so it's very like broad.
Let's think about this. Not necessarily. You could use this exact sentence minus the other problems. You could just say study results prove or suggest that blah 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 blah. Potentially you've already spent the sentences prior to it talking about that specific study. But yeah, in theory, if this sentence was standalone in your own paper, you'd probably want a citation here, at the end where you say Hughes and blah 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 in the year. So so that kind of counts. That kind of is a problem for this one, but that's not the other problem though is wrong with this sentence. Good job though. Does anyone else want to take a stab at this? Let's see if I can come up with a hint. Think about experimental design and correlational design and words that go with it. We kind of already talked about this in a sense.
Is it that you can't say like causes and you kind of have to lead more to like tends to or frequently? Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So once again, let's just go over this. So yeah, we don't want to say prove. We're going to say something like suggest, but also the word causes is going to cause us some problems here. So while this might look like an experimental design, we're looking at chronic stress and migraine headaches. You can only use words like causes whenever we're doing an experimental design. And one of the most basic components of an experimental design is that we have to manipulate the IV. So the IV in this particular, and remember the IV says that it causes changes in the dependent variable. So we know that our IV is chronic stress and our DV is migraine headaches. Can someone tell me the problem with manipulating or changing chronic stress as a variable? Remember, chronic stress is lifelong stress. So can someone tell me why there would be a problem manipulating lifelong stress? Maya.
This could be like a problem with ethics.
Yeah.
In the sense that like it's going to give somebody a lifelong problem.
Right. So here's how you would actually manipulate chronic stress, lifelong stress. You would have to get 100 babies and you would have to put 50 of them in a really horrible, you'd have to give them a really horrible life. You'd have to, put them in poverty, give them abusive parents, malnourished, and then you'd have to take another 50 babies and give them a wonderful life with, lots of good education. That's completely unethical and would never happen, or I hope is not never happening. So this could never be an experimental design. Therefore, we can't use words like causes. We have to use words like influences or increases the frequency of. These are the type of words that we can use when we're just looking at a relationship between two variables. Good job. All right, the next one. The study chose subjects who were at least 18 years of age. Can someone tell me what the problem is with this sentence?
The word chose,
Why is that a problem?
because participants need to be willing to participate in the study.
While that is true, you can use words like chose because whenever you're setting criteria for your participants, you can say, I want people who are at least 18 years of age who are at WVU psychology department. So you are choosing your pool of participants. I see where you're coming at from there, but using a word like chose here is okay. Megan, did you have?
Yeah, I was thinking, well, it says who are at least 18 years of age. It doesn't really give you any specific of like how many people or how many were 18 or how many were 19, like kind of specifics on like the age group.
Okay, that's not the problem for this one, but yes, when you're in an actual paper, you definitely want to give more detail, especially if you're writing about your own paper. If you're writing about your own paper, you definitely want to get into how many boys and girls, how many, age ranges. But maybe in your introduction, you could say, if you're just talking about a study in your lit review, you could just say, oh, the study shows, the subjects who are at least 18 years of age. Does anyone have any other idea before I tell you? All right. So the study actually doesn't do anything. This is a problem that kind of popped up last semester in people's papers. So once again, the study chose subjects who are at least 18 years of age. The study doesn't do anything. You're kind of anthropomorphizing non-human things. The researchers chose. So you could say the study results suggest, or you could say the researchers suggest, but if you're ever talking about anything that is done within a study, you want to say the researchers chose. Here's some other examples. So once again, the study chose, we never would say that. The researchers chose subjects. The article researched the idea that yoga may reduce stress in pregnant women. We want to say researchers suggested or researched the idea. Here's one for some of the animal researchers. The rats believed that tone signaled food. You wouldn't say the rats believed. You'd maybe want to say the rats associated that the tone equals food. So anthropomorphizing is when you attribute these human characteristics like choosing something or believing to animals or non-inanimate objects like a research paper. That one's a little bit tough. Next up, think stats for this one. So that's my hint. Think statistics. Results revealed an insignificant difference between the two treatment groups. Can someone tell me what the problem is? Taylor.
Wouldn't you have to say that there was it wasn't statistically significant or there was no correlation and not just an insignificant difference?
Good job. So the problem with this one is the word insignificant. So what does insignificant really mean? Insignificant means not important or unimportant. The word insignificant is not a statistical term. It's saying, oh, these findings were hogwash, they didn't really matter. Non-significant findings can be just as important as significant findings. And we'll talk about later about, when this may be the case, but let's think about, can I just come up with something off the top of my head? Let's say that I'm Facebook. I submitted a fellowship thing to Facebook. Let's say I'm Facebook and you were looking at the relationship between Instagram use and depression, right? That is what I do. But you would want, if you're Facebook, you would want to find a non-significant relationship between Instagram use and depression, right? It shows that, hey, there's no relationship between the two variables. More use of Instagram is not related to increased levels of depression. So non-significant results are good sometimes. Now, if you hypothesize that there's a significant relationship and there isn't, you're kind of bummed out because you didn't find what you wanted to find. But non-significance does not mean unimportant. But right, you're right. You would always want to say non-significant or results were not significant. Good job. Additionally, you're going to want to avoid this kind of flowery language or your qualifying significant findings. The t-test results were pretty significant. It's either significant or not significant. You never want to say pretty or very when you're talking about p-values. So if something is either significant or not significant. You can talk about, effect sizes. We have large effect sizes and small effect sizes. But when you're talking about significance, it's just significant or not significant. All right, this one is a little difficult. Let's see if someone can get this. The depressed participants appeared to be mostly women. I'm going to say the word, think people first. Use people first language. See if that helps. Taylor?
You can't really say depressed patients. You'd have to say the participants with depression, because you have to use person first terminology.
Perfect. So yeah, so you'd want to say things like the participants who scored high on the depression scale appeared to be mostly women, or the participants with clinical diagnosis of depression appeared to be mostly women. So yeah, you're right. Use people first language. Good job. That was perfect. All right, this one's really nuanced, but it is important. So the task administered was the ANT, the Attention Network Task. This task has been used in previous studies examining the effects of caffeine on attention. I'll tell you the problem is in the first sentence. Is there anyone who hasn't participated yet that thinks they know what the problem is with this one? Think about the order in which things are in. Yep, Margaret?
Would it be that they put the abbreviation ANT before the attention network task?
Yep, perfect. So whenever you're using anything that has an abbreviation, make sure you put like what it actually is first, and then the abbreviation goes after it. Like I said, extremely nuanced, but it is important. Good job. All right, I think there's only one or two more. All right, so the children absolutely hated the program implemented at their school. Can someone tell me what is wrong with this sentence? This is a good example of the difference between creative and scientific writing. Alexis? Did you?
Would it be the absolutely hated?
Yep, good job. There's no need to dramatize or place emphasis on emotions whenever we're talking about scientific writing. You can just say the children reported a dislike of the program implemented at their school. If you're writing your own results, you'd also, probably want to say like, here's what the mean level was, and here's what, the scale could be scored out of. So we could say that, oh, majority of participants scored a 1 out of 5, right? The average was a 1 on a scale of 5 of how much they like their school. So yeah, you never want to place emphasis on the emotions of things. Just want to report it very cold, hard facts. Good job. Here's some more. The authors were really concerned about sampling bias. You can just drop really. It is so very important that future studies, just say it's important for future studies to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I really like scientific writing, because you don't need this extra flowery space in there. You can just say what you want to say. All right, were there any questions about anything that we've gone over with scientific writing? We're going to talk more about some more of these throughout the semester, but here's just a sampling of them. Any questions so far before we get into assignment number 1? All right, so assignment number 1, this can be found on eCampus. I'd suggest you all go over to eCampus and download it right now, because we'll have some time to work on it in groups. For the first assignment, in groups of 2 or 3, I'm going to randomly assign you to these groups just using breakout rooms. These are not your research groups. These are just for assignment number 1. You're going to, so what you're going to see is a abridged and edited student paper with a bunch of mistakes. So there's a bunch of writing mistakes in it. There's things like APA formatting issues, verb usage, how things are described, punctuation, citation issues. There's a whole bunch of issues. On the actual assignment on eCampus, it tells you like, hey, here are the actual problem, or not actual, but here are the problems or the errors in like the abstract. So we can see that there are 3 errors about general APA formatting issues in the abstract. So, like I said, make sure you're reading all the instruction because it lays it out pretty well for you. Essentially what you need to do is download this student paper, and using the comment feature on Word, you can also do it on Google Docs if you want to, depending on how you want to break up and share or do this assignment with everyone else or with your group members. You're going to need to identify the problems. So let me show you what I mean. All right, so let's pretend, can everyone see this Word document? Cool. So let's pretend that this is the homework assignment. Go ahead and delete that. And we have to identify the problem. So blah, blah, blah. Right now I can see, we know that whenever we're doing in-text citations, we need to have the ampersand instead of the word and. So the way you do this is, in Word, you can highlight it, right click, leave new comment, or you can highlight it, up in review, leave new comment. There's 2 ways to do it. There's probably more ways, but anyways, you need to highlight what the problem is, leave a comment, and then say you should use and. So that's what you need to do for your homework assignment for every error on the paper. You don't need to find, I think there's like, I don't know how many errors. There's a bunch of errors. You only need to find like 60-something% of them in order to get 100. So you don't need to find every single one. However, I should mention that whatever group finds the most errors gets an extra 3 points assigned to their grade. So it's a good way to already start off with over 100% for the lab. But yeah, so what you have to do, find the errors, working in groups. Don't circle the error. Leave a comment on a Word document. Yeah, so it looks like there's 74 errors, so you only need to find 48 of them to get 100% on this. Yeah, are there any questions so far about assignment number 1? It's pretty straightforward. Make sure you download the assignment sheet. Make sure you download the student paper. Work together. I don't know how you want to divvy it up in your own groups. Someone gets the abstract, someone gets the intro, or you just all do it, you do the entire paper and you come together and you talk about it. At the end, whenever you submit this, which is due, I believe, right before class. Yeah, right before class next week. Only one person in the group needs to submit it, but make sure all your names are on it. Otherwise, you're obviously not going to be able to get credit. So please make sure all your names are on it at the very top. Yeah, are there any questions about assignment number 1 before I put you into breakout groups? All right, it's looking like there's going to be 3 to 4 group members per group. Yeah, so get together. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, get together, exchange emails, talk about how you want to divvy up the work, how you want, who has the master file, who wants to submit at the end. You guys can leave at 9, let's just say 9:30. Gives you 14 minutes to talk about it, either get started. I'll be jumping in and out of breakout rooms to see if anyone has questions. But yeah, if not, I will see you guys. Don't leave. Obviously, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. You can leave at 9:30, but I will see you guys as a group next week at 8:30. Be looking for an email from me just with a summary. There's not going to be too much on this email, but this PowerPoint is already up on eCampus, and the video will be up probably around 5 o'clock. But yeah, so let me randomly assign. Let me stop.